NASCAR returns to the historic Indianapolis Motor Speedway Oval, at least for now. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. For the past 3 seasons, a crown jewel has been missing from the NASCAR Cup Series schedule. This weekend, the Brickyard 400 returns. You ask just about any driver, they will tell you that winning on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Oval is among the most prestigious things you can possibly accomplish, regardless of car, regardless of series. For the past 3 years, though, NASCAR listened to the fans. Fans had stopped showing up for the Brickyard 400, so NASCAR turned them loose on the road course configuration, and it produced some great moments. McDowell's upset win last season. I thought the IndyCar NASCAR doubleheader was awesome, but it also produced some flops. That curbing on the back straightaway produced carnage in 2021, and turn 1 on restarts is the stuff of nightmares. Now, after a brief hiatus, the oval configuration is back. The Brickyard 400 returns just in time for the 30th anniversary of the first Brickyard 400. Today, I'm going to talk with Dale Tanhardt, NASCAR content creator, streamer, friend of the show. We'll discuss all the notable drivers and storylines heading into this weekend's event. Hope you enjoy. I'm now joined by the one and only Dale Tanhardt ahead of a very special 30th anniversary weekend of the Brickyard 400. Dale, I've got lots of questions for you, but my first question, when that first Brickyard 400 debuted in 1994, it was a huge deal. And still, if you talk to drivers today, winning at the Brickyard is extremely important, but fan support seemed to dwindle over the years to the point that the Brickyard 400 was off the schedule for 3 years. Now it's back. I want to ask you, Dale, where do you feel the Brickyard 400 today ranks among NASCAR's crown jewel races?
I've always felt like it's been pretty high up, and it's interesting because when we get to these race weeks, I like to go back and watch old races at the same track, like leading up to the race. And obviously it's the Brickyard this weekend. I was watching the '07 Brickyard 400 yesterday, and I think it was in the pre-race or early in the broadcast. ESPN would always get Brent Musburger, who is a staple in the football world, very renowned as a broadcaster in college football, now pro football. And they'd always get him on that, and it always made it feel really important. He said one thing that kind of stuck with me. He said, there are no flukes in the Brickyard 400. At the Brickyard 400, you just don't get many fluke winners. Maybe Paul Menard in 2011 with the fuel mileage race. But that's, to me, what's really important about this crown jewel and what makes it sticks out. So glad it's back because of the tradition, and glad it's back because you really don't get a lot of flukes.
Yeah, well, to your point about even Paul Menard's win, which probably was one of the biggest upsets in Brickyard 400 history, is it was a strategy race. Like, Daytona, there's strategy, but it's a big pack. Charlotte Motor Speedway, it can come down to fuel mileage. We've seen heartbreak there in the past, but it's a traditional intermediate. Indianapolis Motor Speedway is so unique. Cup cars have always sort of been a fish out of water trying to make their way around this place that it sometimes lends itself to strategy plays. So it's a full team effort to win the Brickyard 400. I want to start with Team Penske. Ford has been fast lately. Ryan Blaney has won 2 of the last 5 Cup Series races. Joey Logano, his teammate, has won twice if you include the All-Star race in recent months. And Ford lately has proven they can win at a variety of tracks. Keselowski won at Darlington, sort of an intermediate. Blaney at a short track. Logano at a short track. Now Blaney at a big, flat Pocono raceway. So are you surprised at all by Ford's summer surge, and what do you expect out of them this Sunday?
Kinda. I would say I'm not surprised seeing Blaney do well. I mean, how many times over the past few years has Ryan Blaney led a bunch of laps, been in position to win, and something crazy goes wrong? I mean, it's happened this year at St. Louis. But when it comes to speed, and when we look at this type of racetrack, Blaney was great at Pocono. But when you look at the Fords in general at this type of racetrack, it's Blaney and it's RFK. I mean, not even his teammates, Logano or Cindric, in the Penske camp show a lot of speed at tracks that I would say correlate to Indianapolis. So, yeah, no, I expect RFK to be good, and I expect Blaney to be good because it doesn't matter what track we go to. That 12 team has speed on the short tracks, and they've got speed at the mile and a half. Pocono's Exhibit A. So, not surprised by their resurgence this summer, I would say. When you look at Penske and you look at Indianapolis, they might have what it takes to do whatever they want based on what we've seen Joseph Newgarden do at the Indy 500. I know it's a complete non-affiliation when it comes to just the two different series. But Penske's Penske, they own the track, and it seems like they kind of have the juju at this place at the Yard of Bricks.
Yeah, well, they always have things buttoned up for this race. To your point about Ford, if you go back to last season, the last two big intermediate races have been won by Fords. Chris Buescher at Michigan late last summer, and Pocono obviously last week with Ryan Blaney. So some good momentum for the Blue Ovals. But now I want to talk about Chevrolet. My theory, Dale, is that Ford and Toyota have finally caught up and maybe even surpassed Chevy with their newer, bodies for this season. That being said, Hendrick Motorsports seems to be immune to that issue, maybe because they've been the most successful team in NASCAR for the past 4 decades. We saw Alex Bowman win Chicago. Larson won just last month. So do you feel like Hendrick Motorsports has a good shot this weekend? Have they separated themselves from the rest of the Chevrolets?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you want a good bet, just bet on any of the Hendrick cars. If you feel any type of juju, just starting with the narrative play, the 30-year anniversary of Jeff Gordon winning the inaugural Brickyard 400 in 1994. Yeah, we can go there. But yeah, with overall speed, the Chevy camp it seems like it's really struggled with Spire kind of being all over the place. RCR is nowhere to be found. Trackhouse has struggled. Ross Chastain's getting closer and closer to that danger of missing the playoffs, and all it takes is one win and he's out. So yeah. When you look at Hendrick Motorsports, yeah, they're capable of winning at any particular track. And I look at someone like Chase Elliott, man. Chase Elliott, when we go back to Pocono last week, got a late pit road speeding penalty along with a few other guys that took away his shot at winning there. Chase Elliott had a lot of speed at Pocono. I don't know about all of Team Hendrick. Bowman kind of popped up there at the end and ran third, but William Byron is great at strategy. Those guys in the 24 camp are great at strategy. He always finds a way to hang out at the front, but when we talk about Chevy, yeah, Hendrick has definitely separated from the rest of the Chevy fleet in the Cup Series. And when we go, you want to get more specific, I really like the speed Chase Elliott had at Pocono. If he doesn't get a pit road speeding penalty, I think he had a really good shot at winning that race.
Yeah, I know. I wholly agree with you with Chase Elliott. I think he had the fastest car last week. That could bode well this week. But to your point, if Elliott and Larson don't speed last week, we could have seen all 4 Hendrick guys in the top 5 with where Byron and Bowman ended up. So Hendrick Motorsports, they always seem to bring their best to these big either anniversary or special event races. My final question, actually I have 2 final questions for you, Dale. We've talked about Ford, we've talked about Chevy, we have to talk about a Toyota. Denny Hamlin has never won the Brickyard 400, but if you listen to his podcast this week, he said it, I really want to win this race. He's been close a number of times. He's got several top 5s. He has every other crown jewel, 3 Daytona 500s, 3 Southern 500s. He's won the Coke 600. What do you think of Denny Hamlin's chances this Sunday?
Yeah, I think I'm going to bet on him. He's the odds-on favorite at 4.5 to 1, 5 to 1. I think you have to. I think just when you look at just from a speed perspective, he's been one of the fastest cars week in and week out at intermediate racetracks in 2024. And like you said, he's won the 500, he's won the 600, he's won the Southern 500, and now that this is back, I think he's the most experienced driver in the field now to win this race, him or Kyle Busch, and Kyle's won it twice. But yeah, Denny should have won this race. I think back in 2020 when he was leading with like 6 to go and blew a right front tire and then opened the door for Kevin Harvick. And then your favorite driver, Matt Kenseth, almost won it. I'm sure that was a little bit of a heartbreaker.
That was the lone bright spot and also the most heartbreaking moment of that season. It was so bittersweet.
Yeah, I figured it was. But it was good to see him run pretty well in a Ganassi car back then. But talking about Denny Hamlin, yeah, I think you got to consider that he also did one of the tire tests here. He's already been on the track in the Gen 7 race car. The car's had speed all year at all types of racetracks, and especially on the intermediates. He's had the best car multiple times. You could make the argument he had the best car at Pocono last week too, and just didn't navigate traffic well enough to get back to the front when they lost that track position. So yeah, I love Denny Hamlin this weekend. He's knocked off everything. He's proven he can win literally anything except a championship. So I expect him to win this race before he retires.
Tick that final box. Yeah, well, interesting you say Denny Hamlin is the odds-on favorite. My last question for you, Dale, are some of the sleeper picks. Who are some of the drivers that nobody's really talking about? I originally wrote down Brad Keselowski in my notes, but you mentioned RFK, so maybe I'm feeling better. Maybe people are talking about Keselowski, who I think had a top 5 car at Pocono. I also thought of Ty Gibbs, who won the pole last week. He's got the speed, just never seems to finish the job. I guess that's a young driver problem perhaps, or last week it was a mechanical problem. Besides those two, or maybe you can talk more about those two, who are some sleeper picks you're keeping your eye on?
Yeah, I just can't stay away from Ross Chastain. If this turns out to be some kind of track position strategy race, which I expected to be really, really tough to pass. And what I liked about Pocono last week was you had a lot of different strategy mixed up with the amount of fuel that guys were taking. You had a lot of different scenarios where guys were taking 2-tire pit stops versus 4-tire pit stops. I think it's going to be one of those races. And if it becomes a strategy game, I think Trackhouse could get Ross Chastain some track position if he doesn't have the best car. Kind of a weird deal last week. You rarely see Ross Chastain just like crash on his own like that and took himself out when he wasn't really a factor to begin with. But if it does come down to strategy, I look at someone like Ross Chastain, look at Trackhouse. It just seems like every now and then they just pop up. He hasn't been as fast this year as he was in 2023 or 2022, but every now and then it just seems like they pop up and show some good speed. And if they don't, maybe we get some strategy plays there. He's around 35-40-1 on most books. And you look at RFK, you mentioned Brad Keselowski. Chris Buescher's just been so close to winning this year. Actually, last week at Pocono, he had taken control of that race for a while. So the amount of times we see Chris Buescher out in front, running in the top 5, running in the top 3. We know RFK has the speed. They have the strategy a lot of times too. And Chris Buescher's got overall speed in 2024. And you know what also, Eric, I just want to say, I'm on the coldest NASCAR betting slump maybe of my life. So maybe us talking right here will help me get out of jail. Get me out of jail, out of losing jail. Maybe it's not the best weekend because Xfinity's got this crazy package they're going to run that could be terrible. And then it's the return to the Brickyard 400. I feel good about it. I feel good about what I've looked at and what I will continue to study before we get to Sunday. But yeah, I look at Chris Buescher around 15-20-1 range and Ross Chastain 35-40-1 range outright as two of my sleepers for the Brickyard 400.
Well, in your defense, Dale, at least 2 of the last 3 Cup races have been madness. Chicago in the rain, Nashville with 5 overtimes. There's some things you just can't always predict. But thank you so much for being on the show this week, Dale. It's always a fun conversation. If folks watching at home want to find more Dale Tanhardt, where should they look?
Yeah, just add Dale Tanhardt on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all the social media platforms. I do a lot of live streams per week in the just gaming. I'm typically an iRacing guy, but I was suspended for 2 weeks recently for pulling a Matt Kenseth. Yeah,
I knew it.
I knew
He's a
liked
bad
that
influence.
One. Yeah. Hey, we love Matt for that down here in the South back in 2015. But just add Dale Tanhardt everywhere, whether it's iRacing, the short content, or betting. Just add Dale Tanhardt. Make it easy.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you being on the show. We will talk to you again soon, man.
Thanks again.